Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Green Egg Girl podcast. Today, we are diving into Article 1 of the Constitution. So, welcome back to the Green Egg Girl podcast, Constitutional Chaos. All right, please understand I have lots of notes, plus the handy dandy Constitution. Yes, we are still working from the Noah Webster's dictionary from 1828. Yes, it is that thick. The pages are paper thin. It's amazing. All right. If you didn't watch the first episode, please go back and watch it. I gave a brief history of Noah Webster, why I use this particular dictionary, and why this is actually an important thing that we're covering. Please don't mind me as I look down. I do check my notes. This is something that I am spending probably a rather inordinate amount of time going through and making sure I'm taking the correct notes, truly understanding how to communicate this to you all. All right. Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of Senate and House of Representatives. Obviously, we're still seeing this today. This is still how it works. We still have senators. We still have representatives. This is how it started. All right. Article 1, Section 2. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and electors in each state shall have qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of state legislature. Sorry, mouthful. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25 years old and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. Now, obviously, we're still seeing this. This all still stands. There is no change to this at all. So you have to be 25. You have to be an inhabitant of the state. They use that instead of resident for people who travel outside of states on a routine basis to work. So basically, you have a domicile, get my handy dandy dictionary here, inhabitant, as defined by the lovely Noah Webster. All right, this thing's huge. Trying to move it is fun. Inhabitant, a dweller, one who dwells or resides permanently in a place or who has a fixed residence as distinguished from the occasional lodger or visitor. As an inhabitant of a house or cottage, the inhabitant of a town, city, county, or state. All right, so you have to actually live in that state, own a home in that state to qualify. And you have to have been a citizen for 7 years. Representative and direct taxes shall be apportioned among several states, which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians, not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. So basically, this is why we have a census. So it determines how many people actually are in the state. Obviously, we all know that the 3/5 rule has been nixed and it excluded Indians because they're not taxed. So this should also show you that taxing came originally from the state based on population, not out of your income. That's shocking. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years of the first meeting of Congress of the United States and within every subsequent term of 10 years. So again, that's why we do the census every 10 years. In such a matter as they shall by law direct. The number of representatives shall not exceed 1 per every 30,000, but each state shall have at least 1 representative. And until such enumerations shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. So essentially, they did a rough estimation so that everybody could choose and then create the law for the census so that they could determine how many representatives they would have from there forward. When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill the vacancies. So, executive authority of the state is the governor. So, the governor, if there is a death or resignation or whatever, sets up an election to elect a new rep. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. So, obviously, this still stands. It's a little shocking how much we've seen impeachment in, well, my lifetime, mostly in the last several years. But the House of Representatives is the only one that can bring that, meaning the people who are directly representative of the people. Obviously, we've covered all of the ages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So easy to understand. The House of Representatives hasn't really changed much. They have always been a direct representation of the people. I emphasize this because we're about to get into Section 3, where we talk about the Senate, and that is different than what you know today. All right, Article 1, Section 3. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. This was set up this way so the representatives in the House were to directly represent the people. It's why we have districts, etc. And we choose the one person from our area that represents our interest. This was set up this way to represent the state as a whole. So you have to think you've directly elected people to go represent you within your state, but they see the big picture. So your representative from the House of Representatives is supposed to come from your district and represent your district on a federal level. Your senator is supposed to go and represent your state on the whole. So they are supposed to be plugged into statewide, what are the whole state issues, not just the local issues. So they were chosen originally, and the 17th Amendment is what ends this. They were chosen by the state legislature so that the state's interest could be represented to the federal government, not just regional. And of course, their term is 6 years, so they're going to be there longer, which makes sense as they're there to represent the state rather than just the people. It eats up more of their time. They need a longer term to make sure that the state is adequately represented. Immediately after, they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election. They shall divide as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of senators for the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year, of the 2nd class at the expiration of the 4th year, and at the 3rd class for the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year. And if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall fill such vacancies. All right, so basically at the beginning, this is how we end up. We actually get to elect 1/3 of senators every 2 years. You notice midterm elections happen. There's always representatives being elected. Senators got split into a rotating basis so that we didn't just clear everything every 6 years. So here we are on a more stable basis, which was very, very wise. Also, at the time, as you know, there's periods of recess in every government situation. I know it doesn't appear that way because they're always on television. However, there are periods of recess. So when your state is not actually in, basically the governor would choose a temporary to represent the state until the legislature could come back and decide one way or another. Again, this has all changed thanks to the 17th Amendment, which of course we'll get to later. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years old and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state for which he shall be chosen. All right, so everybody knows Joe Biden's the weird one, right? Joe Biden was the one who actually got elected before his 30th birthday. They had to wait to swear the man in until he actually turned 30. So he walked a very fine line, and it may or may, it's a very fine line. He didn't get sworn in until he was 30, but at the same time, he probably should have had to have waited one more year before he actually ran. 9 years a citizen of the United States. And again, we've already talked about inhabitant of the state. So same setup as the House of Representatives, different age category because they're going to represent the state on the whole, which means they have to have a better idea of what's going on. They have to have been here longer, etc. The Vice President of the United States shall be the President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. All right, so we just recently saw this when J.D. Vance had to pass the deciding vote on Pete Hegseth for confirmation. So unless it is a direct split down the middle, the VP is just there. The Senate shall choose their own officers and also a president pro tempore in the absence of the vice president or when he shall exercise the office of the president of the United States. So essentially they vote somebody in if the vice president has either resigned, passed, or had to move up into the position of the president of the United States. The Senate shall have sole power to try all impeachment. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. And no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. All right, so the House of Representatives can bring impeachment. It actually takes 2/3 of the Senate to vote for conviction. And the Chief Justice is the one who oversees this whole process. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to remove from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States of America. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law. So bringing impeachment proceedings and actually being convicted and impeached are very different. And even if someone is impeached, all they are is removed from office. They can't make any money off the United States anymore, and they can't get any other office. Okay? If they decide to bring charges, it will be separate. So there's that. Article 1, Section 4. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed by each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as in places of choosing senators. So, your state decides how elections are held unless they're overridden by the House. The Congress shall assemble at least once every year, and such meetings shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. You can actually get on government websites. They have calendars for when they're in session, when they're not, when they're to be in the district, when they're to be home, or I guess when they're allowed to be home and not in the district, etc. So there is a structure to this, and you have every resource to actually go look it up. I have it. I found it interesting. Actually led to another argument on X. I know that's shocking. Article 1, Section 5. Each house shall be judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. All right. Let's look up quorum because that was a term I figured would not be well known. Handy dandy Noah. Quorum. a bench of justices, or such a number of officers or members as is competent by law or constitution to transact business. All right. So basically, they have officers that decide and make and verify you are of the proper age, you do live in the correct area, you do inhabit the correct area, you have been a citizen long enough, etc. The elections were fair, you are in. So that's what they're talking about. All right, Section 5. Each house shall be judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such a manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. So there has to be a certain number of people there to actually do business of the day when they're in session. Some people can go home, but they can be recalled. If you don't show up when recalled, there is an entire list on the government website that dictates everything, all the different consequences, etc. If you want to go look it up, you can. I did not do a super thorough look through because it was like 30 pages and I have a life. So it is actually on the government website. Quick Google search of consequences of not showing up to House or Senate, etc. It'll pop the whole thing up. So you can go actually look at what's going on. Obviously, you can't just have like 5 people show up in the House of Representatives. There's a ton of people. So they do actually have all the rules and regulations. So you can go look at what the quorum is required to do business. But I believe it was Thomas Massey actually like demanded everybody come back, and he rolled up into DC during COVID. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. So if there is somebody who's just not showing up or is just disorderly in general, and frankly, I see a lot of this on both sides of the aisle. If 2/3 of the members are just sick and tired of dealing with these people, they can kick them out. So it's essentially like a mini impeachment to get rid of them. I would actually like to see that happen more often than it does. I think they're all probably a little too tolerant and a little too dependent upon their party. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings and from time to time publish the same, excepting such parts as may be in their judgment require secrecy. And the yeas and nays of the members of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered into the journal. So this is how we know how everybody votes. Basically, they're just keeping a record of what all's going on. We're going to look at journal. Per Noah Webster, a diary, an account of daily transactions and events, or the book containing such an account. So basically, there's somebody taking notes at all time. They're keeping notes of what's going on, what they're voting for, etc. And it can be kept secret if they deem it to be necessary. However, if 1/5 of the people vote for it to be public, it will be, and it will be recorded. Neither house during session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than that in which the 2 houses shall be sitting. So they can't just go meet at some random location. They can't just up and be done and go home without the other house agreeing to it. So they actually have to work in conjunction with one another. Keeps them honest, right? Theoretically. Section 6. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall, in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their representative houses, and in going to and returning from the same. And for any speech or debate in either house shall not be questioned in any other place. So basically, they write laws to determine their compensation. We're going to start with this. Found some really funny. All right. So on the Senate website, they actually have this. I found it the other day and I really laughed. The article's from 1816. It's called Salary Storm, and I found this very entertaining given the situation we're in currently. In 1789, Congress decided to pay senators and representatives $6 for each day of attending session. So basically, a per diem for actually being there. And given that they don't actually work every day of the year, despite what you may believe, that actually was pretty fair. All right. 27 years later, with the cost of living doubled, the members were still receiving $6 a day. This quote unquote pitiful storm, complained Kentucky's Richard Mentor Johnson, might induce a lounging lout to come here. So it goes on and on and on. In 1816, Congress boldly passed the Compensation Act, abandoning $6 per diem in favor of an annual salary of $1,500. And it resulted in outrage. So they all actually ended up getting voted out. The people were just livid. So to put this in perspective, back in 1816, I actually went and looked up. It's essentially roughly like $150 to $160 a day in today's currency. So yes, it's low, but it's a per diem. You're traveling. You are not there. You are not required to be there every single day. You're only required to be there certain days of the year. So a per diem actually seems relatively fair because you should be working back home. You should have an income back home, which of course today we don't. So the fact that they got the people got absolutely outraged and voted everybody out after that is peak hilarity. Now, if you get on the government website, you can find this. Congressional salaries and allowances in brief. And it was updated June 27th of 2024. You can actually, if you want to go look, see if I can, that's the website. If you want to go look at where to find it, quick Google search, it'll pop right up. We're going to cover just a few things because given that in 1816 the people were outraged and voted everybody out because they wanted a salary instead of a per diem, I wanted to make sure everybody actually understands where we stand today. The compensation for most senators, representatives, delegates, and resident commissioner from Puerto Rico is $174,000 a year. The Speaker of the House is $223,500. The President pro tempore of the Senate and the majority and minority leaders of the House and Senate is $193 or $193,000, $193,400. My word. I don't know about you all, but I definitely don't make that kind of money. And given that they don't actually work every day of the year, it's actually just go look real quick because I bookmarked a couple calendars. So total working days for the House of Representatives is 136 days. They have the entire month of August for $174,000. I don't know. Do you guys work less than half of the year for that much money? Because the average salary in the United States of America is $55,000, and the Senate's roughly the same. Okay, so they're working less than half of the year, less than half. All right, there's 52 weeks in a year. As general rule, 5 business days, right? If we're just going to average here. So on average, we actually work 260 days. And they're working 136. So they're actually working 124 days less than you. And that's their salary. I don't know about you all, but that doesn't make me pleased. But let's go on. They can also earn outside income. Now, it has limits, but there's a whole bunch of exceptions and here's things you can and cannot do. But as a general rule, they can earn an additional 15% of whatever their income is at the time. They also get a $3,000 per year tax deduction just for living expenses. Do you all just get $3,000 that you can just write off on your taxes? I sure don't. I got to spend money to get that back, and a lot of it on a farm. And even then, after a certain amount of time, I have to make money on this farm and I won't be able to write it off. They also have healthcare. And in addition, the Office of Attending Physician provides emergency medical assistance to members of Congress, justices of the Supreme Court, staff and visitors, and visitors. Additional services are offered to members for those who enroll for an annual fee of $650. I don't know about you all, but don't you pay about $150 to $200 just for basic health insurance out of your check every month? And for $650, they get specialty? Members are also eligible to participate in the Federal Employees Group Life Insurance Program. I haven't looked into that, but I bet it's an exceptional package. So I just want you to think about this package as you think about what you get as an average person in the United States of America, and these people are supposed to be representing your interest. I'm going to say they're compensated in a way that they're probably not representing your interest. There's also a members representational allowance, the MRA. May be used for official expenses, including, for example, staff, travel, mail, office equipment, district office rental, stationery, and other supplies. It goes on and on and on. In 2023, this limit was $134,412. I don't know, guys. That seems like a lot to me. I don't know. Seems like a lot. That gives a history. The average spent in 2023 was $1,928,100. Huh. Okay. The Senator's Official Personnel and Office Expenses Account, SOPOEA. The average for that spending is $4,349,735. Seems like a lot. But mass mailings may not exceed 50 grand per year. So they can send out mass mailings for what you make in a year. That's just the mail. I don't know. That seems excessive. Furnishings in state offices. Each senator is authorized $40,000 for state office furnishings, furniture for one or more offices. I don't know. I bet there's a lot of you out there that make about 40 grand. And you're struggling to make it on 40 grand. And your spouse has to work. You have to put kids in daycare and all of that. And your senator can just go spend $40,000 if the square footage of the office space does not exceed 5,000 square feet. The base authorization is increased by $1,000 for each authorized additional incremental increase in office space of 200 square feet. So they can spend more, guys. This thing is many pages long. I grab the things out of here that just I don't know about you. I certainly don't get that. I don't get that. And I want you to understand that's from your tax dollars. We pay that. So not only do we make significantly less than they do every year, we don't get all of the benefits that they do, but they get it all on our dime. Your dime. Think about it. Please go look at your federal income tax and then think about the gas tax and every other tax that you pay, your property, everything. That seems like quite the luxurious lifestyle for working less than half the year. At least to me. Again, if you want to read that whole thing, please do. I encourage it. Those were just like I said, the biggest things. It's not the only things, and I'm sure I could deep dive into more. And there is also on the same website, there is an entire report on their retirement accounts and pensions that was in my brief assessment fascinating. And you pay for this every day. Every day. That's by law. And then you can increase it by law at any time. By the way, the largest increases came through in the 80s and 90s. So think about the senators that are still sitting around there making that amount of money, yelling about millionaires and billionaires. Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Mitch McConnell. Those are the ones that come to mind first for me. They've all been there for that. Joe Biden was there for that. If that doesn't make you angry, I don't know why it wouldn't. Because this is supposed to be people who are representing you and your interest, but I don't know how someone can represent your interest and not actually have the burdens that you do. It's no wonder Nancy Pelosi's fridge was full of ice cream and she was bragging about being locked down during COVID because her salary didn't change and she didn't have to work. I digress. Anyway, they also get the benefits with the exception of treason, felony, and breach of the peace, which we're going to go look at the term breach. Breach, as in breach of the peace, a violation of public peace as by riot, affray, and any tumult which is contrary to the law and destructive to the public tranquility. I don't know, guys. Maxine Waters making that much money, having an excellent retirement account, by the way, and a pension on top of it. She seems to be one who gins up a lot of breaches in peace and tranquility, and yet she's still not arrested. Not sure why. I'd really like to understand that, though. They can threaten each other. Part of why they just to give you a little background. Like I said, these guys were violent. I talked about this in the first one. This was a bunch of very manly men who overthrew a government when this was written. So they made sure to put this in here, and I thought it was really funny. They also can't be arrested for speech or debate in the House, and they're not to be questioned about it in any other place. So basically, like, if you're in the heat of the moment and you're arguing and you threaten somebody, the cops just can't come and question you about it later. Like, they actually acknowledge the fact that there should be some heavy discord in there. I thought that was pretty great, personally. However, everything else in that entire paragraph just pissed me right off. All right, I'll finish this section and then I'll move on. I'll wrap this up and we'll circle back at another time to carry on after section 7. Anyway, section 6 continued. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he is elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time. No person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. So basically, if you're holding an official position in the U.S., you can't do both. You can't benefit off anybody this way in two ways. Now, we're going to look at emoluments. All right. Emolument. The profit arising from office or employment, that which is received as a compensation for services or which is annexed to the possession of offices as salary, fees, or prerequisites. So basically, while you're serving in office, you can't have somebody holding your salary back for you or anything like that. It can't. Basically, you lose everything if you were in a civil office for the United States of America and you left to go be a representative for your district or a senator for your state. They can't hold these things for you. It's 100% unconstitutional. You can't profit from it in any way. So this was actually set up so that these monsters couldn't leech off of us. And yet, as I just covered, they are. Anyway, I'm only 6 sections in out of the 10 in Amendment 1, and I'm going to wrap here because I just noticed that I'm like 45 minutes into talking about this, and by the time I edit, I hope it is significantly shorter. However, being 6 sections into the Constitution, if you are not pissed off at the current circumstances that we're looking at, I don't think you're looking close enough, and you need to go get on some government websites and find out how many benefits these people are really getting from you when they're actually supposed to be there to work for you and for the good of your district, for the good of your state. I would also say go start looking into your state constitutions as well and see what breaches are being committed in your state. Because, well, my guess is it's all about the same across the board. It's a bunch of greedy people who are all interconnected, and there's a million ways to make more money or have your family make more money so that, oh, I don't know, maybe your kid's part of a board in Burisma. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe your kids are, making a ton of money in stock markets, or your cousins, brothers, aunts, uncles, everybody. Maybe it's all feeding back in, but, by the Constitution, well, it's not your money, right? Go start looking, everybody.